one point I was the colonel, and that was when I was starting university, and workload became huge. So I sort of stepped back, and Aztir took over, and he was probably better as I'll say ambassador to dealing with other regiments. He's got a lot more patience than I do for people that want to complain about things I consider trivial.
So, what was it like then? Like, so it didn't sound like that was like a power struggle or anything, because some regiments really go through it on like power. How was it there in the?
It was fine. I mean, the core sort of officers really worked well together. Just because I guess you're always in comms coordinating, and there wasn't really any need for a power struggle.
So it was well established. What were kind of like, if you were in the 77Y, did people ever like slip under the cracks because it was such a huge? Because I know when I led my own regiment, it was still hard, even though it wasn't as big. I got like maybe 50. It was still hard for me to make like those connections.
So it was all broken down into detachments. So the way we worked it is all new applicants would fill in a website form, and they would contact. That would go to me, and I would deal with all of the new cadets during training and induct them and do all the cadet training. Once they were sort of sufficient in the basics, they would get promoted out to one of the various detachments, so line, artillery, or light infantry, / skirmishers, whatever you wish to call it. And then they would have their own officer corps that would deal with it. So you'd have a captain and a lieutenant who ran each detachment. So anybody joining would have plenty of interaction with their captain and their lieutenant.
Mm-hmm.
You would have gone through interaction with myself and Aztir through the cadets school, but after that, you could. It depends what you're calling lost in the cracks. I mean, you're never going to be able to interact with everyone in a 200+ group of people, regardless of what you're doing.
What also piques my interest is when I was in the AAF, the regiment that I led, 2016-2017. And one of the things that I faced too was the reputation was always something that you have to be careful for, because whatever you tend to do, you tend to get like a label for. What was the kind of outlook that other people had when they're looking? Like if I was from an outside perspective, would you know like how I would kind of view it?
I think it would depend who you spoke to. There was a lot of perceptions, definitely in certain regiments where old rivalries ended up. Half the time, the rivalries persisted between the regiment even after the people that were involved had all left. Like nobody was there on either side, and both regiments are still like, we hate you for that thing that happened 4 years ago that none of us were there for. So if you spoke to any of them, you would get a very different answer to probably someone that didn't interact with us or someone that regularly attended the events we attended. As you would with any group, depending on your exposure and the group conscious experience of a thing, you're going to have your own opinions on stuff.
Yeah, one of the things that you might find interesting was I was in this regiment called the 104th, and basically kind of the mindset was we like hated this other regiment called like the 2E DLG. I remember I was like 14 at the time, and I've never really hated like a person or thing like too much, but man, I was actually like, we'd make jokes about them all the time in TeamSpeak, and like that was a big deal. And I think the idea for that is when you have that enemy or that rival, it actually kind of strengthens the unity of the group you're in against like that foe. You get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, and against a like an entity like a regiment name, then fair enough. But some people push it over the limit and start
that's the issue.
Targeting individuals.
Oh, especially I think recently in this community, we've definitely I don't know if you've been here, but the North American community, along with most of the communities, nearly at the end, very very toxic. And I'm not saying like I was perfect. I'm not saying I've never like done anything that's probably been harassing someone, but I think there has definitely been times when people really like would dox people, release personal information. It's really terrible sometimes how bad it gets. So how was that back in those days when you were playing the game? Was it that toxic, or like how was it in terms?
I mean, I don't remember anyone getting doxxed, not to that extent, but you would definitely have sort of just standard abuse in chat, and refusing to play against each other, refusing to play on the same team as each other, that sort of rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, that still happens here. Irritating.
I found it quite amusing that nearly all of the main regiments that ended up arguing avoided each other by specializing in a rule set that the other regiment wouldn't play. So, like, the 91st loved fire in the charge events, whereas we loved fire in formation events, which meant we never interacted with each other. So the old rivalry that ended up being there just never happened, but everyone still got upset about it, even though it was 4 years after the event.
That's crazy, isn't that? That's kind of neat in the psychological level. So do you got any like stories that you can remember of, like, you know, either a really big event or something like that? Maybe from all the videos you've done.
Well, there's a few. It depends whether you want like epic story or things going horribly wrong story.
What do you want to do?
I think the Grand Campaign one was probably one of the funniest to see from almost the sidelines. We weren't particularly involved. So there was a big push where someone made basically the total war map, and regiments got assigned to country factions, and you would push pieces around, and as the pieces engaged, fight battles in the game. So if you had 3 armies, you would be allowed, say, 60 people versus their 1 army, so they'd only be allowed 20, and you know the pieces would get necked off the board and stuff. But the person organizing it was someone called Casper, and he decided that in the first battle we were attacking a town, so he loaded it in, and it was a siege event, and he went, okay, the defenders needs like to get into the fort because they spawn outside for some reason on this map. So we'll start it as soon as that happens. I'll let you know in the chat. You know, wait 1 minute.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there waiting in the spawn, you know, all blobbed up, expecting, you know, the thing to start going. Yeah. And then suddenly we just get volley fired from the walls. He's set them all up on the walls, pointing straight at us, and then sort of said, "Go in the local chat on that team." And it's like, what? Hang on a minute. And because of the rules of the event, you only had limited reinforcements based on how many men you had in the world map thing. So it ended up being, I think, it was either a loss or a ridiculously costly victory. You know, like a Pyrrhic victory type thing. But there was a big like blowout about the fact that the rules changed on the fly, weren't described, all that sort of thing, and for some reason he got really agitated on the forums and ended up telling Vincenzo, who's the head dev, to go and do one, and that he was God and it was his event. At which point Vincenzo just banned him from the forum, completely just gone.
Wow.
And so died the campaign.
The campaign just died.
Yep, just gone because the organizer wasn't on the forum to post anything anymore. It's like, well, that was a whole lot of effort and for nothing really.
I had a miserable event one time. All my guys died in one shot, and basically what happened was, you know, I was leading in like a public line battle. At this time the AEF, I think we had around like 11 guys in the group, so I was with me and my like 10 guys behind me. And then we're like walking up a hill, you know, casually smelling the roses. There's that eagle flying overhead. And so what happened was, I get a message on Steam because I want to get more people in the game, so I'm like messaging people. So I'm like, all right, guys, halt behind me. And I have them, you know, just below the hill.
Yep.
And so what happens was, one of my mercs who was there, his name's Anthony, move us, we're going to get hit by a cannonball. And then as soon as he said that, I kid you not, the cannonball came and it was like, whoo, and everyone died. And the only person left alive, and then I was like walking away from like the terrible carnage that was like my 10 men dead regiment. They're all like yelling at me in TeamSpeak. And then I DC'd. So everyone died.
Oh, we had a great cannon scenario. It was set up on a hill, and for some reason we'd sent the infantry down to the right to engage this big line that was coming up. And the idea was just that we would push them away from the artillery because they were running towards it. And instead they just left-faced and volley fired the infantry. And so the cannon just turned, and I'm just sitting there on the hill watching it going,
oh no.
That's gonna be big. It was like 37 kills. It was ridiculous. The amount of, it was a monstrous line. I think it was double rank, and it just evaporated the lot of them.
Oh my my gosh.
I mean, 37 may be overstating it a little. It was 20 plus on positive.
Oh my god, devastating. What was the chat like? What was the chat?
The chat just went mental. Everyone was like, "Best cannoneer EU." It's like, in fairness, he had a line sitting point blank in front of him. It was difficult to miss, but for fair play, he spotted it. That's the point.
So
he actually saw it was a target to start with.
So did he see them in the angle as like they were like lined horizontally or vertically?
So they were coming at him as sort of in a line marching straight towards him.
Okay, so like double column marching straight towards him, not like
not column, like actually line. So double rank line marching towards him, because then he could only ever kill 2 at a time. So they were like, yeah, we're going to get this cannon. But then our line engaged from the side, and they just sort of wheeled.
So that's what happened. And then
then he was just like, well, 3 kills, thank you, bye.
So did you see the shot from your perspective, like the cannonball coming down there?
So I was up on the hill, so I was sort of possibly 45 degrees on, so I couldn't see how much of a straight line he actually had. And then they all just fell over, and the kill feed just went off the top of the screen. It's like, yep, okay, it's on the video somewhere. I don't know how to find it. I could possibly look it up.
After the event, you can look that up. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah.
You give me the time mark.
The other one I remember distinctly was, I think it was the first siege event we did after swapping to Napoleonic Wars. It's the little square fort with a house that's slightly raised. You've got the mortars and the cannons in there. And they run up across like an open field with a path. I can't remember what it's called. But I had all the cadets as a line on the inner part of the fort, up on the raised section by the building, just firing into the breach as stuff came in the breach.
Mm-hmm.
And one of our mortars went off, and it was targeting their spawn. And I saw the shot go up, and you see it come down. And in the video, you see it hit their spawn. And if you zoom in really closely, you see this little fleck, and it comes back across the screen and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then nails the cadet directly next to me in their head. It's like shrapnel just cross-map headshot the guy next to me, and it was our cannon shot or our mortar shot. It's like,
so it was a team kill?
Yeah, it's a cross-map shrapnel team kill.
I
was just like, did that just happen? Like, you sort of see my character look right, look left, and just like, no, what? No. And then I went and looked it up in the video later, and you can actually just see this pixel coming across the screen in slow motion, frame by frame. It's like, yeah, that's never happening again.
That's awesome. Holy crap. That cadet got so unlucky. Everything that had to go into that. Oh my gosh, that's probably like one. Could have won the lottery, but instead he got hit by.
Yeah.
So when you were like in the 77Y, were they more of a competitive regiment or more of a casual?
So we didn't really attend too many of the sort of big competitive NW League type things. Towards the end, the line part of the regiment started sort of attending them of their own accord, because it was what they were interested in. So from an organized competition perspective, possibly not that competitive. And generally, when an event was over, we didn't sort of keep scores and go, "Oh, we beat you last week," kind of thing. Or, but when we're in an event, it was focused, coordinated. We're in this to win, and then that was that.
So what were kind of like the values of the regiment? Because in my sense, like when I was in the AF, I always tried to encourage like bonding of the group. Played games after. Was it more of a gaming community or just away from?
So we didn't try and force it to be a gaming community, but definitely the officer corps and what I would call the core of the regiment were like a bunch of, I'd say 40 people, where if they were online, they were in TeamSpeak. They could have been playing something completely different. They would go make their own channel with the name of the game, and then if people wanted to join in, they could. So it was a gaming community, but it wasn't. We didn't try and force that on people. We sort of appreciated some people do want that, some people don't want that.
That's neat how that's able. So in like the middle of your career, like what were some like lows of the 77Y? Did you ever run into trouble with like recruiting or members, or like was it ever administration?